All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
We are live on Facebook. So for those who also want to share the Masjid Al Mu'minun link so that they can watch this live on Facebook, that can be done as well. We're going to open up with Al-Fatiha and then have a welcoming speech. And then we're going to share a little bit about our first presenter this morning. And then we're going to jump right into our 2020 Sisters Ramadan session. Let's open up with Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. We're going to turn it over to Sister Charmaine Akram, who will be giving our welcome this morning.
I greet our viewing and listening audience with the most excellent greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us for our 8th annual Sisters Ramadan session. And yes, it is open to everyone. COVID-19 has us moving and shaking in the right direction with social media. Our theme for this year is Learn to Read What Allah Has Revealed, 2020 Vision into the Sign of the Times. We know that you're in the right place and pray Allah's blessings of understanding to each participant. On behalf of Masjid Al Mu'minun and the Community Affairs Committee, welcome, you're in for a treat. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Sister Charmaine. At this point, we would like to introduce our speaker for today. Alhamdulillah, we have the honor of having Sister Shahidah Sharif. Sister Shahidah Sharif is an enthusiastic educator of the Arabic and Islamic studies, a Hajj Pro guide, and a certified doula who studied in Damascus, Syria at the Abu Nur University through the Mosque Cares Initiative, as well as the University of Miami. She is an active community worker in Atlanta, serving as the communications director of the Atlanta Masjid of Al-Islam and the current president of the Sisters United in Human Service. She loves surprising her children and husband and making them laugh heartily, and is a novice gardener hoping to grow her skills and some food. So without further ado, let us welcome Sister Shahidah Sharif.
Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah. And Ramadan Mubarak. I pray that everyone is doing well, inshallah. as we're entering the first or almost completing these first 10 days of Ramadan, and we know these first 10 days are the days of mercy, inshallah. So we pray that Allah is blessing us with mercy, inshallah. I just want to make sure everyone hear me. Is it okay? Just the chat that you can hear me well. I just want to make sure before I begin, inshallah. Okay. Alhamdulillah.
We're having a hard time
As I
seeing.
said, alhamdulillah, it's a blessing to be here with all sisters. Alhamdulillah, I was blessed to be in Memphis some years ago for the Ramadan Sisters session. So to be able to be on this platform in this manner during this current time is a mercy and a blessing. And we know that I'm going to try.
We're having a hard time hearing you, Sister Shahidah. So we're going to try to address this really quickly.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah.
You should be good to go. All right, we can hear you, Sister Shahidah.
Alhamdulillah. I was
No.
trying to get the spotlight out of the view. Alhamdulillah. I pray that it's not too distracting. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I pray that, with this time that we're in, that we're able to know that we're adjusting with the times. And while we are struggling in this movement of adapting to something that is different, this struggle is good for us because it's putting us in a situation, or situating us, I should say, in a way that, in a platform that we normally are not used to using to teach and to share about the religion of Al-Islam, as well as the understanding that we've been given through our teacher, Imam Wahdi Muhammad, rahimahullah. I believe that this is a beautiful opportunity where you're hearing from so many of our teachers on so many different platforms, and we're able to hear and to engage and to learn and to reach so many more. And that's the beautiful thing about the internet. Some say it's a blessing, some say it's a curse. And I see it as a blessing, where certain communities that were maybe not as visible or as out front as others are now having that opportunity to do that. So a lot of things are flipping around. And so a few things that I wanted to share with us today, and then inshallah I have time for question and answering, was to speak to the theme that our sisters so beautifully chose, learning to read what Allah has revealed and having a 2020 vision into the sign of the times. So inshallah, we will begin there. And in just sharing some insights just from reading the Quran. Alhamdulillah, it's a blessed month of Ramadan to have the time to be introspective and to sit with the Quran and the word of Allah, and to sit with ourselves and be still, where we are normally maybe used to moving about. So alhamdulillah, this has been a beautiful opportunity, even within the struggle and the difficulty and the challenges that we've experienced of the loss of lives. I just want to say that it's important that we do acknowledge that when we're going through difficulty, that we acknowledge the trials and the challenges that we're experiencing, while also at the same time giving opportunities to grieve that loss and acknowledge it, as well as look for the blessings and the opportunities for the wisdom and understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to give us, inshallah, for our growth and our progress, not just individually, but as a collective, and as families, and as a community as a whole, inshallah. So I begin with A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma alimna bima yanfa'ana wa anfa'na bima alimtana wa zidna ilman wa amilan mutakabbilan bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. O Allah, we ask that you bless us with knowledge that is beneficial, and benefit us from that which you teach us, and increase us in knowledge and deeds that are acceptable to you, O merciful one of the one who bestows mercy. Alhamdulillah, I bear witness openly that there's only one God, and that Prophet Muhammad is the messenger and servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with that, I begin, of course, as in the title or the theme, was to read the signs, right? That was one of the biggest things that, or one of the main things that stuck out to me, was reading the signs. And alhamdulillah, Allah has established his creation and established the beginning of revelation from this understanding, which is a very potent, important, and pregnant term just in the word read, right? The Prophet of Muhammad, when he received revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Angel Jibril, he was instructed to read, and not just, of course, to read literally, but because he was giving him the book of the word of Allah, but he was also instructing him to read the signs of creation. And so this was situating the prophet for his mission in this world, right? So when he was instructed to read, the direct connection that he was given was to his creator. The words that were given to him was Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, right? Read in the name of your Lord. So not only are you to read the signs, pay attention to what is around you in creation, but it's in a direct connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's in a direct connection with your creator. So what we're here to do, what our mission is on this earth, in following the example of Prophet Muhammad that we've been given, is not only to understand the nature of things and to understand how to read scripture scripture and scriptural language, and also to read what Allah has put as signs in the creation, but to always keep that connection to our Creator. Oftentimes we can become pregnant with our own thoughts and our own capacity and ability to intellectualize and become very hypothetical in our theories. But we should always make sure that we're bringing that connection back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and back to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. If we're doing things independent of the Creator, then that's where we move into um, a position or a situation that was what Shaitan or the Satan put himself in. So we always want to align ourselves that when we're reading science, when we're understanding nature, when we're understanding the creation and looking for the signs within those things, that we're doing it within the context of what our Creator intended. Alhamdulillah. So with that, my specific topic is how the inner dimensions of our worship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us and outlined for us within the Quran aids us and is an ayat for us in carrying out this mission. Okay, so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this mission to the Prophet, he gave him a blueprint on how to carry out this mission. He didn't just say, read in the name of your Lord who created you, and then left him to fend for himself. No, he gave him instructions. He not only did he reveal the Quran to him, but it was reviewed with him every year, right, in this month of Ramadan. And not only that, he was given instructions and specific examples of those prophets that came before him so that he wouldn't repeat the mistakes of those of past. And when he did fall into error because he was human, he was also corrected and reminded as well. And so for us, it's important that when we're looking at the opportunities we have, especially in this month of Ramadan, especially at this time, but throughout our life and throughout this each month, every year, that we are understanding more in depth and refining and reviewing how can I improve my worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can I improve my prayers? How can I improve my purification? Am I praying on time? Am I praying all of my prayers? Am I perfecting my worship in that way? Meaning that I have a full understanding of what is required of me, what are the expectations of me as it relates not only to my prayer, but also to my other acts of worship, right? And so just going into that, we'll be looking at how is it that we are able to break down each pillar, understand it in the context of a sign for us, and how this is going to aid us in our mission and fulfilling this vision that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for us, right? And in this day and time, when we see the signs of the times that we're in, how are we as people of faith to situate ourselves to be successful, right? We know that in this society, and we know that just from history past, that there are those who seek to, not just in scriptural language, but also in the systemic way that they establish society, seek to have one group of people over the other, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is flipping that script for us, and he's giving a successful blueprint for us as believers, right? So when we actually follow this blueprint, when we follow this prescription, we no longer have to be in fear of anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we will see ourselves developing a situation, not only for our individual selves, but for our families and our communities, where no one can keep us from progressing in our moral behavior, in our educational lives, in our institutions, of financial institutions, and as well as our communities. And so what I'm really, I would say, imploring us or encouraging us to do is to really become more serious minded about how we approach our way of life. All right. And oftentimes we're reminded of these things in Ramadan because we're coming to the Quran and we're reading all of these reminders of those who came before us and what is really required of us in our obligations. And so the more you start to see the repetition that's in the Quran, you say, okay, well, I want to learn more about this aspect of my faith. I want to learn more about this aspect. So it's important that we start to look at that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us guidance for that very point and that very reason. And so in order for us to have the right situation, in order for us to be successful in this life, this means that we have to order our lives according to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set out for us in the Quran and how the Prophet exemplified. Okay. So when we're talking about this order, we're given the order in just understanding that we have our Shahidah, we have our prayers, we have our salat, we have our zakat, we have our Sawm for Ramadan, for fasting, we have our Hajj pilgrimage. All of these things are given to us, and we have been given insight and understanding as to what are the inner dimensions of each aspect of these things, and how does that look in my life on a daily basis. So if I'm thinking in context, we can break it up into those 5 categories. And of course, we understand we have the pillars in the back of our mind, but when we talk about it contextually and how am I to interact with these pillars, that it's not just ritualistic for me. It's not just, oh, I understand the science behind it, but it's that I'm actually using it as a tool to order my life to be successful, not only as a believer, but as an establisher, as a person of faith in this world, so that I'm ordering something for what I was designed to be as a human being, and that I was designed to be as a believer and one who accepted the trust and the manner from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? To be a khalifa or to be a caretaker of this environment, this earth. And if we see how we're being situated right now, when we say we believe in Allah, when we say we believe in Allah and we say we trust in the word of Allah and we follow the example of Prophet Muhammad, prayers and peace be upon him, then it is incumbent upon us to know more details about that. What does that entail? And for many of us, we have been practicing our faith for maybe 30, 40 years, or maybe more recently, may have become Muslim. And we get our book, Introduction to Islam, or we study in this class with this person, studying this class with this person. We pick up a book here, put it down, and it gets away from us, right? Because we have the everyday, day-to-day living with our families, cooking, cleaning as women, but also working out there in society if we have our careers and or such, or just community work, whatever we choose to do. How do we order our lives then in the midst of all of that? Because oftentimes we have this dichotomy of living a double life, so to speak, in the sense that I may have been raised a certain way, or I've been raised in this society. So there's certain things that I just have to do because I live in this society, when there's certain things that have been ordered from me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how do I order my life in that way? When we have the understanding from our Imam, may Allah have mercy upon his soul and grant him paradise, the highest level of paradise, that our 5 pillars are correlated to our 5 senses, right? This is to inform us that we have a sacredness to our life, that there's a sanctuary of human life that exists within us, and that has to be protected. That has to be guarded. If am I to understand that I'm here for a mission and I have a purpose that is divine and is connected to the creator, right? And I've been given this prescription with these 5 pillars and or these 5 ordinances that I'm to use in order to get to this next station in this world and in the hereafter, then there's something I have to do to ensure that I'm safeguarding and protecting the sanctity of my soul, the sanctity of what this human or this physical being houses. Okay. And so when we're guarding that soul, we're guarding that ourselves against the influences in society, right? So that's our understanding. So when we understand, one, our purpose, why are we here, what we were designed for, what is our mission, and that is connected to something divine, no longer will we look at ourselves as inferior. And when I say inferior, I'm not just speaking of racism, right? Because many of us have lived in the context of racism in America, and we have situated ourselves where that's not even a concept for us, where we know it exists, we acknowledge it, but we keep moving towards our goal. And so, yes, for some that may still be a challenge, but for many of us, when we put things in its place and in perspective, and we operate with universal human truths and moral fiber, and people operate and interact with us in that way, we're no longer subjected to that device of inferiority complex. However, what we do have to acknowledge is the inferiorities that come when it comes to religion, right? If I'm not well versed in scripture, then it's not sufficient enough for me to lead my sisters in prayer, or to lead my family in prayer, or to know how to fast and begin the fast and end the fast, right? So there's a lot of psychological challenges that we experience of inferiority complexes outside of race, right? And so when we start thinking about what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has required of me as an individual, when I stand before him, I have checked off these 5 boxes that I am in good standing, right? So for us to take account of ourselves and really look at that, we have to go into the Quran and say, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about this? Okay. So when we talk about prayer, excuse me, let's begin with the Shahadatain. When we talk about the Shahadatain, we're actually looking at it from the perspective of, this is our covenant, this is our contract that we have taken upon ourselves with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That when I say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, that I'm openly bearing witness that I, my individual self, agree to these things that follow with this contract, right? That I'm obligated to understand these certain things, and that I am responsible and accountable for these things. And so this is important for us to put in perspective. So when people say, oh, I took my Shahadatain, or I became Muslim, we have to shift our paradigm and our language to help them understand, what does that really look like? If I say I'm going into a contract with somebody and I have an agreement with someone and I put my name on that dotted line, that means I'm obligated to fulfill those duties within that contract. So if I'm looking at my Shahadatain as a contract between myself, and how do I safeguard and protect my soul from the influences of the society, that means I'm going to take that contract a little bit more seriously. I'm going to look at it a little bit differently. When I approach my prayers, I'm going to approach them a bit differently because of the seriousness and the high office of that I'm giving it, right? So, and when we talk about the prophets in the Quran, like Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was known as of the Hunafa. He was of the Hanifa, right? That he was those who were rightly guided. He was a friend of Allah, right? And so when we talk about these prophets, these individuals are given to us to understand, what are we striving for? What are the elements that we're trying to imbibe into our paradigm and into our personality? And so when we talk about the covenant of Ibrahim, or the millah to Ibrahim, the path that he took, we should be looking at ourselves as, what is my millah? What is my covenant? What is my contract? How am I living into that contract with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And we can do that on a daily basis. Am I fulfilling my contract? Am I being true in my word and in my deed, as it relates to me saying that I submit to the oneness of God, and I submit to that his prophet is his messenger, and he is the prophet, the last prophet, the seal of the prophets for all of humanity, right? So that's first and foremost. Then when we look at our salat, we're looking at our salat as a means of not just our focus, but bringing order to our life, bringing consistency to our life. That when I'm in my prayer, I leave off everything else. Once I make my intentions and I establish my purpose, once before that, once I've purified myself, made my intentions and established what I'm doing, that I'm standing upright. I'm seeking to be that Hanifa. I'm seeking to be that person who is rightly guided, right? So I'm standing up straight. That means how I conduct business, how I interact with people, I'm doing that with dignity. I'm doing that with integrity. I'm doing that with respect for myself and for other human beings, right? So when we look at our Shahadatain as our contract, and fulfilling that contract with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my prayer as establishing who I am, my identity, and my character in this world and society. So when people see me, they see someone who's focused, they see someone who's dignified, they see someone who's humble, they see someone who is sincere and who's standing upright in their faith, right? Meaning, I have no fear for anything that comes my way. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Baqarah, there's a Surah Baqarah, ayat 238. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. He says, حافظوا على صلواتي وصلاة الوسطى وقوموا قانتين وقوموا الله القانتين. Guard strictly your prayers, particularly and especially your middle prayer, and stand before Allah in devout frame of mind, in a devout frame of mind. So we're instructed not only to safeguard and protect our focus, but to pay particular focus to that middle prayer, right? And of course, in our understanding, is a difference of opinion as far as that middle prayer. Is it referring to the Asr prayer? Is it referring to the Maghrib prayer? But when we look at it, either way it goes, when you're talking about our prayer, it's talking about how we're living our life, how we're establishing ourselves. And if in the beginning of our life and in the end of our life, we know that there's certain things that are beyond our control. When we're young, we're still developing, we're at the whim, or I should say, we're literally at the mercy of our parents or our grandparents or whoever is we're in the protection of and is raising us. In the end of our life, we are also in the safeguard and protection of who's taking care of us when we can't take care of ourselves. But in the middle of our lives, we have to pay particular attention to that. Okay, so be it as it may, however we want to look at it, our prayer and how we establish our lives, when we get to that middle phase of our development and our understanding, there's no way that we can continue to say, it is sufficient for me not to know because the imam knows. It's sufficient for me not to know because the sister knows, or my mom, or my dad, or whoever it may be. At that point, in that middle phase of your development in your life, you have to start making some clear decisions. Is this the life that I plan to choose? If so, how do I plan to conduct myself in this way of life, right? And as a young person, if I'm entering into that middle phase of 20s and 30s, I have to start making some more serious decisions. And honestly and truly, I look at it a little bit earlier when we're in our earlier years and development of our younger sisters. And I pray that we do have younger sisters in our audience, or sharing it, inshallah, on the other platforms, because many of our elder sisters are leaving us, right? And have given us wisdom, our mothers, our aunties, our community leaders. And it is incumbent upon us to take the wisdom that we have received and pass it on to our younger sisters. That means it's incumbent upon us to have someone that we are guiding, that we are encouraging, that we are being of service to, the same way how someone was in service to us, right? So I had many mothers, many in addition to my mom and my aunt and my grandmothers, but I had many sisters in the community who guided me. So now it's our turn to do the same for those behind us, right? So our prayer or our orientation is what brings about our enlightenment. If we're really seeking understanding of who Allah is, what our mission is, that means we have to pay close attention to our prayers, right? We have to pay close attention to our establishment of who we are and how we present ourselves to the world, right? And so when I say that, that means if I am deficient or challenged in any area, it's time for me to start refining that. If I have trouble remembering things or staying focused in my salat, what can I do to increase my focus in prayer? These are the things that I'm talking about, right? And in true reality, when we really start to think of it, these pillars or these orders that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us is preparing us for our next phase of development, and that is for death, right? Many of us are shy or ashamed or fearful of death when this is something a believer should embrace. This is something that the believer should be uh, confident about and grateful for, that Allah is bringing a clear reality to us that we're just mere specks of dust. We're just here for a brief time. And in this time, how do I spend my time? Am I just, being idle with my time? Or am I serving a purpose, serving a mission, serving my community, right? Serving my family in that reality. And so with that, it's important that we remove those fears by coming to understand and know in our creator. And if you really start to look at it, the way how nature develops, everything is cyclical, right? There's life and there's death, and there's this movement, that this continuity, that if you really live as a believer and you have sincere faith and establish all of these principles within your life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised us a hereafter where we will meet our maker. Not only that, that we will be brought back, right? So if we say we believe in this, that is true, that we will be brought back. If we think about those who have passed on before us, we're still praying for them. We're still giving charity for them. We're still offering good deeds or acts of service for them. That means they're still with us. We still speak of the Sahabas, right? We still pass on their stories. So that's why it's important for us to understand, in order for us to maintain ourselves and to establish ourselves in society, we have to know who we are, why we're here, and what is it going to take for us to sustain this life. It's not sufficient enough for us anymore to rely upon another individual to live my faith. I'm going to say that again. It is not sufficient for us anymore to rely on any other individual to live our faith. Okay? So, whatever that requires of me, for me to learn, to do the due diligence, for me to understand what does that look like for me in reality on a day-to-day basis, I have to make effort. I have to take the initiative to learn for myself, right? That means seek out a teacher. That means seek out information. And there's so many resources that are available to us that there's no reason for us not to have that accessible to us. Moving into our third understanding of zakat. Zakat is a means for us to remove any enmity, any rancor in our hearts, any hatred in our hearts. You can't give charity, or it's difficult, I should say, or challenging to give charity to someone and still have hate for them in your heart, right? This is a way of purifying us, purifying our egos, removing that ego, removing that sense of I have and you don't, and putting myself above someone else, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah Ash-Shams, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا, right? That the soul will be successful when it's purified. That term, we understand zakaha is coming from the same word of zakat. And any time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions establishing prayer, he also talks about establishing and giving in charity, right? Why? Because they go hand in hand. When you stand consistently in your focus and order in your life, you have to constantly be in a state of purification. Even the Prophet, may Allah have praise and peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even he was known to be asking for forgiveness. He was known to stand late for long hours in prayer, right? When he was already promised the paradise. But why? So that he can show his gratitude, so that he can show his sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means no matter how much wealth you have, no how much, it doesn't matter what station or rank you are in this world, you're nothing. You're just a speck of dust. I'm just a speck of dust. We're just a speck of dust. And this can be here one moment, gone the next. And this reality is being presented to us right now. We are looking at signs right before us to have an understanding of, when I read this story in the Quran and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wiped out a whole group of people, we're seeing that right now, how a whole group of people is being wiped out and there's no control. We don't have any control over that other than our responsibilities to Allah, right? So when things are challenging for us, this is a time when we have to hunker down in our faith, right? So yes, we acknowledge the trials. We acknowledge that we have to grieve those things that are lost. And now we have to say, what is my responsibility to myself, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to my collective, my community, that I, one, don't lose my sanity, and I don't lose my purpose and my mission of why I'm here, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reminds us in Surah Tawbah, this is Surah 9, ayat 112. He says, what, subhanAllah, سبحان الله وتنئبون عابدون الحامدون السائحون الراكعون الساجدون الآمرون بالمعروف والناهون عن المنكر والحافظون لحدود الله والبشر للمؤمنين. Surely Allah speaks the truth. And it says, those that turn to Allah in repentance, then serve Him and praise Him, that wonder in devotion to the praise of Allah, that bow down and prostrate themselves in prayer, and that enjoin good and forbid the evil, and observe the limits or the boundaries set by Allah, they do rejoice and proclaim the glad tidings to the believers. Surely Allah speaks the truth, right? So this is a reminder for us that we are to be of those people who order our lives and establish ourselves, not just for the sake of, material gain, but also for us to have a form and a spirit in this world. Okay? When you have a form and a spirit in this world, you can establish a full, healthy, and whole life that will benefit generations to come, right? If we're just physical without the spiritual, we're at a loss, or vice versa. Okay? So it's important for us to understand that. And then the last two, with our fasting or Sawm, and with the Hajj, the Sawm is for us to really establish heart awareness, to really establish that self-awareness that we're to have, but also the heart awareness where that taqwa is coming into play, and that regardfulness of Allah, that when certain things are tugging at my heart, I have a sacred pause that I'm giving before I act. And I say that because this happens not only in reality, but also virtually when we're online. A lot of us have those trigger typing fingers where we can respond to something really quickly because we have something witty to say, or even in person. Sometimes we're quicker to say something online than we do in person, right? And so even in these new platforms and these different spaces, we have to honor that sacred pause. Why? Because it's there for a reason. Whether we submit to it or not, we always have an opportunity to make a choice. We always have an opportunity to respond in a good way or a not so good way. And this is really an obligation for us as people of morality, as people of integrity and dignity, that if we say we want to be leaders in the world, then we have to be conscious how we present ourselves on all these platforms, whether it's in person or it's online. So we should always make sure that we're establishing ourselves firmly, and that we have a uniform, a unified, and a clear picture that explains not just who we are, but how we're living, how we're to be engaging with society, and in a way that is dignified. Because we see a lot of things, right, that happen online, and but not just there. In with everything that's going on now, it's easy to react. It's easy to respond. It's easy to use foul language. It's easy to just go to what our nafs is calling us to. But this is where that establishment of the principle of Sawm, or self-restraint, and really becoming aware of my heart, really becoming aware of myself and my obligation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's where that comes in, right? So that's that checking. That's that checking and balances of what that's happening within. And then lastly, with the Hajj or the pilgrimage, that's our struggle. That's our communal struggle. So we have our internal struggle, and then we have our communal struggle. And in addition to that communal struggle, this is also a reminder for us that we're social creatures, that we're not here just by ourselves, and we're not just here for ourselves, that we are here within a human movement, and that we're here to serve humanity. So when we're reading these signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, it's not just for our own personal advancement, it's for the collective advancement of humanity. And if we're situating ourselves properly, and we're obeying and being obedient to these principles in our life, we will start to see ourselves situated and ordered, not only to be in leadership, but to be guiding others to a clean way of life, to a whole way of life, where the family unit is strong, where the individuals are strong, and those things that seek to defeat us or to make us weak, we can start to weed those things out. So if I'm looking for enlightenment, if I'm looking for understanding, pay more attention to my contract with Allah. Pay more attention to my order of my prayers. Pay more attention to my charity and my giving of what I have, right? It doesn't have to be monetary. It could be those things that I love, right? But being able to purify the things that I have. And then, do I have self-restraint, right? Some of us are very quick with the tongue, but being able to control that or manage that in a way that it works in our favor, and then understanding how we're to operate as a collective with humanity, inshallah. And so when we understand these things, we start to see those signs. The last point I just want to share is, we're all familiar with the hadith of the famous hadith of Jibril, where the Prophet ﷺ was approached by Angel Jibril, and at the end he told the Sahabas, when they asked him, who was that? They said, this was Angel Jibril. He came to teach you your religion. So he broke down the different elements of Islam, of Iman and Ihsan, right? Understanding the pillars of our faith, the principles of what we believe in, and then also how do we achieve that level of understanding of excellence, of accepting and enjoining the best of who we are and what is morally accepted as good. And then also he talked about the signs, right? Where you would see the slave giving birth to their master, right? Or the competition or the competing of building tall buildings. And we're seeing all these things now. It's not for us to be fearful, but it's for us to have understanding, right? When you have knowledge, when you have understanding, it removes that fear or that grief. It actually gives you hope. It actually is a reminder for you to have contentment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in the trials and struggles that are presented to us, but also to have a good opinion of Allah. All right, and this was something that I was reminded of from another teacher yesterday, in that even with all the challenges we're experiencing, that we're to have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That we're not to situate ourselves or position ourselves where we're thinking negative thoughts about why is this happening, or why is Allah permitting these things to happen. All this is in Allah's plan. And so I pray that when we approach our pillars, we're approaching it with more consciousness, with more intentionality, and that we're living into our mission, which is directly connected to the divine. So if I'm moving in this earth as I'm on a divine mission, nobody can stop me, inshallah. So I pray that my words are beneficial. Anything that was good is from Allah. Anything that is harmful is from myself. And I ask for forgiveness for any mistakes, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. If there are any questions, I am here. Alhamdulillah.
Wa alaikum assalam. At this point, if you have any questions, we are taking questions through the group chat. And if you are watching on Facebook Live, we are taking questions through the Facebook Live chat section below. So there is one question that came up, and Sister Shahidah, we know that you are a guide with Hajj Pros. And so we are talking about the signs of the times. You spoke of the end of times and how we shouldn't be fearful of it, but we should look at it to gain understanding. And so, with the Hajj being canceled this year, do you have any comments on how we should look at that and understand that?
That's a good question. I'm not laughing at the question. I'm laughing because Hajj has not been canceled. So I just want to clarify that there's no official statement that Hajj has been canceled. So and I've heard that question several times. So just to clarify, and it's not just Muslims, it's people worldwide. Just in some statements were put out there, but they were false statements, and the Hajj ministry clarified that. But alhamdulillah, it's been a blessing to be directly in communication with the Hajj ministry for these past few months because it has been stressful, and we have been worried about, is the Hajj going to be canceled, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control, right? How it's gonna look, we know it definitely is gonna look different. What has been limited is the Umrah, right? So Umrah is the smaller pilgrimage or the lesser uh, pilgrimage, but is really considered a visit. So you can visit the Haramain or the two masjids in Mecca and Medina. You can visit them all year round, except during the Hajj time. That's the actual season. And so for the Hajj season, which is normally around August, well, it goes back, of course, each year, but it'll be about 4 months after Ramadan. So it's looking to be like around August. And so what they've done in the past when there have been outbreaks of viruses like SARS, MERS, H1N1, they've reduced the amount of people coming to the precincts, right? So I can only see that they will reduce it significantly. As to whether or not it will be completely canceled, we have not received that information, and that has not been done, and they haven't even conferred or concluded that. So just to clarify that notion, but at the same time, Allah's in control, right? So whether it's one person circumambulating the Kaaba or if it's the bird circumambulating the Kaaba, Hajj is taking place. We're actually, and I say this with all humility, that we're in Hajj right now. I tell people, once you make your intentions for Hajj, you're on Hajj. So if you think about it, the whole world is moving in a collective movement right now, in a struggle, um, all going in one direction.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. So we have another question here. Do you have any advice for staying focused during prayer? My mind wanders so easily these days. Thank you in advance.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. That's a good question. A few things, when we talked about uh, our prayers and how we approach our prayers, even just in our mindset of what frame of mind am I in before I even approach prayer? What am I looking at as my focus? If I'm not focused in my prayer, more likely I'm not focused in a lot of things, right? A lot of us, we start doing work on the computer and all of a sudden we're on Facebook or we're checking our phones, right? So it's real challenging just to stay focused these days because we're just so bombarded by so many things, and so that's challenging for all of us. So to say that that's not a problem or challenge for anyone or for myself, it's, you really have to work at it, right? And so some things that I have learned or understood is that when you change and shift your understanding of what am I about to do, when I'm making my wudu or I'm making my intentions to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that this could be my last prayer, right? So if I put that in mind, that if I'm to pray this prayer as if it's my last prayer, how would I want this prayer to be prayed? When I know that prayer is something that I'm going to be asked about the first thing in the hereafter, or when the angels approach me as my soul is being lowered in the grave, this is the first thing I'm going to be asked about. So how serious, how focused am I on this order and this consistency that I should have in my life, right? And so if I'm praying prayer 5 times a day and I'm distracted all day long, then that means I need to really reevaluate what's happening in my life. How am I ordering my life? Is my life just chaos? Am I just surviving? What's really going on? And what is it that I have to quiet and still within my heart and within my mind to remove those barriers, right? So like I said, with intentionality, I'm about to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This could be my last prayer. It was said that the Sahabas, when they were about to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in prayer, they would become almost pale, meaning like they shivered knowing that I'm about to stand before my creator, right? And so this means I'm not just taking my prayer lightly, like, oh, let me go make my wudu. No, I'm perfecting my wudu. When I'm washing my face, I'm perfecting my character. When I'm washing my hands, I'm perfecting my good deeds, asking my sins to fall away. When I'm cleaning out my nose, these are my sensitivities, my sensibilities, right? Everything that I'm doing, I'm asking Allah to bless me with humility. I'm asking Allah to bless me not to use my strength for other than good, right? Not to oppress people, to establish my foundation. All these things that we've been given with insight and understanding that I'm not just making wudu. I'm not just standing in Qiyam, I'm actually standing as Ibrahim and establishing my purpose in this life, right? So this is every prayer. And then also too, when I'm reciting Quran, my mouth should be moving. The Quran is that which should be read. So, many of us say, oh, I don't know it, or I'm not uh, uh, confident in it. I should actually have my lips moving because it's difficult to think about something else while I'm reciting. So those are some things that I see that is helpful. But then also, if you're able to get up in the night, pray the night prayer, the tahajjud prayer, or the qiyamul layl, pray those prayers and stay in sujood, stay in sajda, stay in prostration for long periods of time, and ask Allah to remove those things that are burdening your soul, right? We know what's burdening our soul. So take it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, take it to our sajda, take it to those times when we can be most intimate in our conversations with Allah, when it's most quiet in our homes, and try to get up and do those things and ask Allah to remove whatever that burden is, inshallah.
Inshallah, alhamdulillah. Thank you for that advice, Sister Shahidah. We have another question here. It says, sometimes it's difficult to understand the signs of things that happen to us. How do we interpret those things so that we can learn from them?
Alhamdulillah. That's a good question. And it depends, right? Is this thing coming from my own hands? Or is this something that's coming from outside of my control, outside of my circumstance, right? So it's important for us to put things in perspective. A lot of times, we might complain about getting into bad relationships with these not so good people, but then we realize after a while the common denominator, right? So, we have to really start looking at how are we approaching our circumstances and situations, right? If I'm to understand that Allah is telling me something and or trying to remove me from a situation, as much as I need to get this particular job, or I need to be with this particular person, or whatever the goal is that I'm trying to obtain, and there's something that's stopping me everywhere along the way, that's for me to pause and say, maybe this isn't the path for me. Maybe this is a sign for me to reevaluate what my intentions are, right? A lot of times or sometimes we may put ourselves in a situation where we're trying to be in the company of certain people that may not be beneficial for us, right? Or that it may be an injustice for us to be in that particular situation. And so whenever you find yourself in a circumstance where it's causing uh, a squeezing of the heart, and I don't mean a squeezing of the heart in purification form. I mean squeezing of the heart in an oppressive form, right? Because we can oppress ourselves, right? So when we're finding ourselves in a circumstance that is constant hardship, constant struggle, constant grief, and this is something that's outside of our control, we have to be still, one, and ask Allah for guidance, right? Ask Allah for clarity, ask Allah for strength, that even when the thing is revealed to you, that you have the capacity to bear it. You have the capacity to address it, right? A lot of times, and I encourage a lot of people, sisters, brothers, whoever it is, to always speak your truth, right? When you speak your truth and you have sincerity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah has your back. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of that. He says, Ittaqullah wa kullu qawlan sadida, yuslih lakum a'malakum, wa yaghfir lakum dhunubakum, wa may yuti Allah wa rasulahu faqad faza fawzan adima. That when you have true regard for Allah and you speak a word that is that directed to the mark, meaning that you don't shy away from the reality of what's happening, that Allah will clean up for you your actions. He will wipe away your mistakes. And literally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is informing us that He will involve Himself in our affairs. And so, even if I say I don't understand or I don't see the signs, be still. Be still with that. Don't go calling every single friend. Just ask Allah for clarity. That means you have to go deeper. Go deeper in understanding of what is it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to show me, and listen for the answer. Oftentimes we want the answer to come right away, but that means we have to go a little bit deeper, dig a little bit further, and really be truthful, not only with those outside of ourselves, but be truthful with ourselves as well.
Alhamdulillah. We have another question here, and it says, I have read hadith and been reminded from Muslims that women cannot lead the salat if there is no male present. However, what if the male is if there is a male present? However, what if the male is your child who does not know how to lead the salat yet, and it is only you two present? How will they learn?
Right. So if you know how to pray, then you pray. You lead the prayer.
Alhamdulillah. We have another question here coming to us from Facebook Live. And the question was asking, this is a new sister from Memphis, moving to Memphis, and she wants to know, how do you, in this time that we're living in, connect with other individuals throughout Memphis to build that sisterhood?
Alhamdulillah. I would say contact the Memphis Masjid, Masjid Mu'minun. Alhamdulillah, it's a beautiful community of sisters there, very welcoming. Alhamdulillah. So I would say reach out to the community and show up. Right. Oftentimes we put our hand out looking for help and assistance, but what are we willing to give and to serve? So I would say when you join a community or you're introduced to a community, share your talents, share your gifts, and invest in that community.
We have another question, Sister Shahidah. They have all the questions for you this morning. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Hopefully we don't run out of time. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So it says, what resources would you recommend for new Muslims in learning these areas of our deen from the teachings of Imam W. Deen Muhammad?
Alhamdulillah. That's an excellent question. And I encourage, I'm very much an advocate for studying directly from the teacher. There are many students, and I would say the best information, the best resource is the teacher himself. There are many lectures of Imam Warthi Muhammad available online. There are many of his transcripts online available, and I would say it's good even for children. When you have an opportunity to sit with your children and listen to the Imam, and listen to or read one of his lectures, or read one of the printed materials that he or I should say interviews that he may have had in a Muslim journal, is good to have that archives in your own library, right? So that you can have an understanding of what or how Imam Muhammad taught. And Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, he taught from the Quran, and he taught from the example of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He, and I say that specifically so that when we talk about Imam Warthi Muhammad and his teachings, that we don't think it's something other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed, right? What the Imam has given us is clear insight and understanding into how we're to apply it within this day and time, but also to understand it from what came before us as well. Because a lot of teachers and scholars that I would say disseminated information over years, they had an agenda. They had certain intentions, and Allah knows best. And Allah allowed us and permitted for a lot of those burdens to be removed from us. And so I would say go directly to the teacher so you don't become blinded again, right? Once you have clear vision, you want to maintain that. So I know newafricaradio.org, they still have a lot of transcripts there, as well as the Muslim Journal, different platforms online. And many of his students, have transcripts, or there are many publications with the WDM ministry. So I would say go directly to the source, and inshallah, you will benefit because you may receive something that someone else didn't.
Alhamdulillah. At this time, we do not have any more questions, Sister Shahidah. If you would like a few minutes for any closing remarks, and we will begin to introduce our next speaker, which is Sister Obaydah Abdur Raqeeb.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So I just want to thank the Sisters of Memphis for inviting me to be a part of this beautiful program, and also to do something different. They dared to do something different, and they jumped right on in there, and I'm grateful for that. And I believe that this is a time where we do have to adjust. It may be challenging, but learn it the same way how everyone else is learning it and adjusting. Learn it because it's important for us to have our messaging out there. It's important for us to really shift the conversation, inshallah. And it's time, alhamdulillah. So I look forward to hearing from our sisters Obaydah and Anisa, inshallah. And thank you so much to Kalima as well for facilitating. Assalamu alaikum. And Ramadan Mubarak.
Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak, Sister Shahidah. All right. So we want to make a few announcements before we begin to move on to our next speaker. The announcement that we would like to make is that this is currently being live streamed on Masjid Al Mu'minun in Memphis, Tennessee's Facebook page. You can, if you came in late, or if you missed some sections, or if you just want to go back and review the information that Sister Shahidah has shared with us this morning, you can go back on our Masjid page and you can get that information. We also want to let you know that this is a 2-day Sisters Ramadan session. And when we say Sisters Ramadan session, we are simply saying that all of our presenters are scholarly sisters in our community that is sharing information with the community. But it is open to all to be able to share and to learn from these teachers. Today, we had Sister Shahidah Sharif, and we're going to have Sister Obaydah Abdur Raqeeb. And tomorrow, we have the pleasure of having Sister Anisa Dawan, and she will be on the same platform. We will send out the link for those who are joining us with Zoom. We also have it on the Masjid Al Mu'minun's Facebook page. She will be joining us at 1:30 Central Time. So those who are Eastern or Pacific, please pay attention to your time zones so that you can join us tomorrow at 1:30. So without further ado, we're going to introduce our next sister, which is Sister Obaydah. This is a free platform, and so we always encourage individuals to make donations so that we can continue to have this platform for the believers to be able to share during this COVID-19 season. I call it a season because it's going to go. It's going to leave us soon. So this COVID-19 season that we are in. So we are going to take a brief pause in order to prepare for our next presenter. Assalamu alaikum. At this time, we're going to introduce our sister Obaydah. I'm going to pull her bio. Okay. Obaydah Abdur Raqeeb is a native of Chicago, Illinois, but was raised in Miami, Florida. She moved to Nashville, where she earned her undergraduate and master's degree at Tennessee State University in biology. Dr. Obaydah worked for a short stint in a primary education prior to attending medical school at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. She did her residency in family medicine at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. She recently relocated to Memphis and is currently a family medical attending and is currently a family medicine attending at the VA Medical Center. Dr. Obaydah has been blessed with the opportunity to engage in various community service projects locally and abroad. She was raised in the Muslim community under the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad and has remained a constant student of the religion of Islam. She is fluent in Arabic and is an Arabic instructor at our Masjid Al Mu'minun. Additionally, she has served on many panel discussions on religion and health. Raising from a family of doctors, both parents, Obaydah is often seen sharing the spotlight with her father, Dr. Nasser Ahmed, discussing the Quran and applying the language and the tafsir of Imam Muhammad. Dr. Obaydah is a strong proponent of healthy eating and healthy lifestyles with the Quranic base. She is married to Dawood Abdur Raqeeb and has 3 children. So without further ado, we would like to welcome Dr. Obaydah. One second. One second, I have to unmute you, Dr. Obaydah.
Assalamu alaikum, can you hear me? Okay, no one's responding, so I hope you all hear me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ramadan Mubarak. I pray that the peace and blessings of God Almighty upon you and your family. And I hope that you are having a blessed Ramadan. This Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. It's a lunar calendar. I'm explaining this because I'm hoping that there are non-Muslim listeners here on the Zoom or Facebook Live conference with us. It's the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, and it is a blessed month in which Muslims all around the world fast together. As Sister Shahidah, the speaker before me, was explaining, it is one of the 5 pillars of our faith. We use this time to reflect, to increase in our prayers and our deeds. And we use this time to try to purify ourselves, again, as Sister Shahidah was relaying earlier. It's a very different time for us right now because of this pandemic. It's definitely changed how we perform these rituals and these rites. And it has definitely changed and hopefully is evolving us in how we think. There are some things I would like to address before I start speaking on this topic. And the first one is, I am not fluent in Arabic. Inshallah ta'ala, that is your dua for me. That is your prayer for me, that I become fluent in Arabic. But as of yet, no, I am not. The second thing is, just for that sister who's recently moved to Memphis, first of all, assalamu alaikum to you and welcome. I pray that Allah will bless you here in this city. And I'm inviting you that you can reach out to me. So if the sisters have your contact information, they can certainly forward it to you. And I hope you find some sister friends in this community. So this topic, reading what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed, this 2020 vision, I wanted to talk about the best of stories. And when I say the best of stories, I'm referring specifically to the Quran and one of the surahs of the Quran. And I'll go into a little bit more depth about that. But when we talk about reading what Allah, the Most High, our God, has revealed, to me, there are certain things that we're referring to. We're talking about, number one, this fitra. You know, it's this natural nature, the natural world. We look at the trees, we look at any and everything that's of Allah's creation, and that is a revelation. It's a sign. That also correlates to another aspect of the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is the scientific world. In the Quran, and some of us, we think when we say al-alameen, which are the those worlds of knowledge, of science. So that's another world. And when we talk about these, or another revelation, another ayah, and so I'm going to incorporate a third aspect, and that's the Islamic scripture itself. So when we talk about what Allah has revealed, I'm going to separate into these three things initially as my introduction, and to let us know and remind us that these all, they correlate and they agree with each other. There's no disagreement in it. They have to agree and they have to verify each other, because it is the witness to Allah's truth. So if we look at the Quran, this is Surah Al-Ankabut, which is the chapter of the spider. It's chapter 29, the verse is 35. And it says, وَلَقَدْ تَرَكْنَا مِنْهَا آيَاتٌ I'm going to start over. Subhanallah. وَلَقَدْ تَرَكْنَا مِنْهَا آيَاتٍ بَيِّنَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. And we have left thereof an evident sign for any people who understand. And sometimes when we say ayah, right, and we use the indefinite form instead of a definite form. So we're not saying el-ayah, we're saying ayatan. It has a tanween on it. We're not just specifically talking about one sign. It oftentimes means many signs. So what this is saying is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left for us all kinds of signs that we're to use for understanding ourselves, understanding the greater world, understanding our purpose or our vision. So mankind, being of those three that I referred to earlier, the fitra, the science, and the scripture, is unique in that he has free will, or he or she has free will. If you look at, for example, a bird, the bird will read Allah's revelation as well. It'll fly around and it will seek for its provision. It'll fulfill its needs and it'll fulfill Allah's command, and that will be sufficient for it. But when you look at the creation of man, we have a different creation. We were created for something more than just complete submission. We have that free will. And as Shahidah mentioned earlier, we have an amana, we have a trust that we have given to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And part of that blessing that's been bestowed upon us are incorporated in our five senses. And when we look at those five senses will often congregate, meaning that they'll often work together. So if I, for example, am sitting here and there's a sound that I hear, usually what will happen is that I'll turn towards that sound. My eyes want to verify, it wants to see what it is that I'm hearing. Food and drink, they recruit multiple senses. We have our taste, our sense of taste, our sense of smell, our sense of touch, and then also that sense of sight, where we want to see what it is that we're eating. But when you look at the eyes, when you look at the sense of vision and sight, the vision sort of is set apart. It can oftentimes be left alone. You don't necessarily have to touch something or hear it. Like right now, we're on the Zoom platform. So what you're doing is you're using your sight. If the sound even went out, you could still see me, and that might be of some significance. But I'm hoping that you all have sound and vision for this lecture and these lectures. But the sight can oftentimes be left alone. And when you talk about the eyes, they're often referred to as the windows of the soul. Eyesight is often equated to intelligence and understanding of an individual or a group. So when somebody is trying to explain something, the person who's responding might say, oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. So it's oftentimes this vision that we talk about when we're talking about understanding. So it's quite, it correlates with the theme of this year's Ramadan session. So we go to the Quran al-Karim, and again, the Quran is the holy book of the Muslims. It is the revealed revelation of our Creator. These are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you listen to us reciting to the audience in a different language, that language is Arabic, because the Quran was revealed in the Arabic language to the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So God sent an angel to a man and recited to him his words. And those words were recited in the Arabic language. And to this day, every Quran that we study as Muslims in whatever country of the world is given in the Arabic language. It should be the exact word for word. So if I go to China and I open up the Quran or our holy book, it should be the same as if I go to England, or if I go to the island of Hawaii, or wherever in the world, it should be the same. And we study the Quran in the Arabic primarily for that reason, but also because the Arabic language is a blessed language. It is the language that we can all be familiar with. And that is the reason that oftentimes you will hear people very firm in their advice to learn the Quran, to learn the Arabic Quran. It is also encouraged for the people who don't understand Arabic, who don't speak Arabic, to read the translations of the Quran in their language so that they have a better understanding. And even people who are studying Arabic, to also delve deep and to study the words in their language so they have a better understanding of the Quran. But the Arabic in and of itself is, again, a blessed language. So when you get into the Arabic understanding of the Quran, it opens up greater understanding of what God is revealing to us. So yes, he revealed it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him. But this is also a book for all of us to study and to know, because it is a guide for us. Again, these are signs for us to understand how we should live our lives. So I was talking to a dear beloved sister of mine who was telling me about her visual problems that she has. She's starting to have problems with seeing. And she said to me, I would prefer, if I had the opportunity to choose, to not be able to walk or to lose some other function than to lose my sight and even my hearing. And she reminded me that there are so many places in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the vision, the eyesight, and the hearing, and how important it is. So I wanted to remind us of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. And this time I'll give us the English. And this is in Surah Al-Baqarah, the chapter of the cow. It's Surah 2, Ayah 7. And it says, Allah hath set a seal on their hearts and their hearing, and on their eyes is a veil. Great is the chastisement they incur. So we have this blessing of these five senses, and these things can be easily taken away from us. And so when you think about the potential for losing those blessings that you have, or you are actually losing them. So these are my readers. I've gotten to the age and the stage now where my eyesight is not as great as it used to be. So I am very fully aware of the blessing of being able to see the 20/20 vision that I don't fully have anymore. And then again, another place in Surah 2, Ayah 17, Ayah 18, where it says, deaf, dumb, and blind, they will not return. And in quotation marks, it says the path. So if we get back to the best of stories, this is where I really wanted to hone in on this vision that we should have as Muslims. And I absolutely love the stories of the prophets. I think that there are so many places in the Quran, in again, our holy book, that we find ourselves. We find stories about ourselves. And it may not particularly be, my name is not in the Quran, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I find myself in the humanity of the people of the Quran. So I wanted to highlight from the surah that's named Joseph, or Surah Yusuf, is Surah 12. And in that surah are the stories of two of the blessed prophets of Allah, one being Joseph, or Yusuf, as it's titled. But I specifically wanted to highlight more Yaqub alayhi salam, or Jacob, who is the father of Joseph. And one of the blessings of Yaqub alayhi salam is that we know that he is the son of Isaac, or Ishaq, who is the son of Ibrahim, or the prophet Abraham, peace be upon them all. So he has a beautiful lineage of coming from the prophets, and then was blessed to have a son as a prophet. And to me, Yaqub alayhi salam is representative of eyesight, or vision. And so when I'm talking about eyesight here and I'm relating this story, I will try to also highlight that we're not just talking about the actual being able to see from the eyes, the anatomy, the reflection of the light. Whereas you can see me and you see that I'm covered, I have on a black hijab and that sort of thing. But I'm talking about the insight, So when I relayed those verses to you, if you heard, it was also talking about the heart being veiled, because the eyesight is that one part of the vision, whereas the insight is that inward thing. It goes in, is what we develop on the inside, or what we're blessed with to have as the understanding. So Yaqub alayhi salam, again, he was a prophet. He was blessed with 12 children that we know about in the Quran, who all were raised, became 12 different tribes that he had taught in the way of the oneness of God, the true fitra, or the natural way of living. But when we look at this again, to see the humanity in these stories that we can relate to, we look at his children and we say, okay, well, these are men who were raised up by a prophet of Allah, one who was given insight into revelation. And what did they do? They were men that faltered. They allowed jealousy to enter their hearts. So when Joseph, and he was the younger at the time of the brothers, not only was he younger, he had a different mother. And there was something that they saw in Joseph that incited in them some jealousy. Yusuf alayhi salam, or Joseph, had related to his father that he saw 11 stars, the sun and the moon, prostrate themselves to me. And so his father, in his insight, told him not to tell his brothers of that story. And part of what he advised his young son, he said, Satan is to man an avowed enemy. Now, there's some discrepancy. There's no real, we don't know specifically from the Quran itself whether or not Yusuf alayhi salam related to his brothers the stories, or the vision, the dream that he had. But whether he did or he didn't, it was at that time that the jealousy of the brothers just overcame them. And so what they did was they plotted and they said, kill him. Children of a prophet, human beings like you and me, they were jealous of their brother and they said, kill him. And then they said, then be righteous after that. So they plotted, and then they wronged Yusuf alayhi salam. They threw him down a well, and they went back to their father and they lied to their father. Yaqub alayhi salam, having vision and insight, told his sons, the ones that had come back to tell him this lie about what happened to Yusuf alayhi salam, because essentially they told him that an animal had eaten him up. He told them, your minds made up a tale. And what he did was he explained to them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him insight and vision that they were not aware of. So this beautiful story that really emphasizes Yusuf alayhi salam and the struggles that he went through, again, is a story for all of us to relate to. So if you imagine a father with multiple children, who was a very loving, very kind, a righteous father and a guide to his family, had his son, the son that he had known now, to become another prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have that son taken away from him and he not know what happened to him or would happen to him. We can relate that to where we are in our lives now. We had been living our lives, and like Sister Shahidah said, maybe we had been studying for years and years and years and struggling to get to a place where we want to be, or maybe we were wayward and looking for a way, and then decided, okay, this is the time that we're going to do it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely changed all the circumstances in our lives. And we end up with this pandemic, and we have a pandemic in Ramadan. And I really want to stop here and address where we are in our mindsets and where our hearts are at this time, because I would be remiss not to say that we're in challenging times. And if not challenging for everybody, it's certainly different times. But there are some of us that are actually struggling in whatever shape, form, or fashion. For some people, this is a time of blessings. It's a time of affluence. Not everybody is directly impacted by the deaths or the money loss or things like that. And alhamdulillah, may Allah continue to bless you and reward you. But we have some people that are actually sick. They're not well enough to get out of bed. We actually have people who are losing their lives. Many people's lives have literally changed. There are people who do not have jobs. There are some people who are struggling to eat. And then there are people who are struggling with multiple things. And then there are some of us who struggle with the vision now. We don't understand. We struggle to see what it is that Allah is revealing to us. We struggle with the fact that we are not able to go to the masajid, to the masjids, to the mosques, to the places of worship, and we're not able to congregate. There are people who were trying to figure out, well, how am I going to pray my Taraweeh prayers if I don't have somebody to lead me, because I don't know the Arabic and I don't know how to perform those on my own. So we can relate these struggling and difficult times because these were also things that happened during the time of the Prophet. It may not be the exact layout, but these were tests and trials, and those were uncertain times. And so what happened? What did Yaqub alayhi salam say? And it is said in the Quran that Yaqub alayhi salam, peace be upon him, had actually lost his vision, his eyesight, the actual eyesight, not the internal insight. He didn't lose that. He lost his actual eyesight. So what did he have to do? So now that he did not have that external vision, now he had to say, okay, I'm going to rely more heavily on my internal vision. And oftentimes you will see that happening in people who have external deficits. So somebody may not have eyesight, a blind person, for example, and instead their hearing is heightened. And that's a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or they don't hear very well. And so their eyesight or their touch perception is heightened. And that's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now that we've been placed in this time where we're stricken by something that we cannot see, then we have to go not to the 2020 external vision, we have to go to that 2020, because we're in year 2020, internal vision. We have to go back to the reliance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and start reading the other signs. The other signs being the Quran, the nature, the science, to help guide us to the next phase in our lives. So if we talk about we're having trouble with, well, I lost my job. I'm not speaking of me personally, but if there's a person who's saying or who's experienced that loss of a job, then that person has to go now and seek what it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for them. And we also have to go back to that reliance and that hope and that trust in Allah, as what Sister Shahidah was mentioning earlier. One of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahu Razzaq. Allah is the one who provides every provision. So we may have lost one job, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who will provide for us throughout our lives. And even beyond this worldly life, Allah will continue to provide for us. He will always be Ar-Razaq. He was Ar-Razaq before we came into this world, to this physical being, and he will be Ar-Razaq after we leave this physical being and move into the next world. So if we go even to the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, also we look at the continual struggle that he had throughout his life. And his father wasn't there to physically witness that, but imagine the pain that he felt on the loss of his son. And I would imagine through his insight and the revelation and Allah being close to him, that he definitely had, and he said to his sons that he had more insight than what they had. So I imagine that he felt some of the pains that his son Yusuf alayhi salam was feeling. So some of the struggles and some of the trials that Yusuf alayhi salam endured, like I said, he was thrown into the well as a young child. And then from there, when he was taken out of the well, the people that took him out enslaved him. They were happy to find this young boy because they had ulterior motives on him as well. So then he was sold as a commodity, a young child being sold into slavery. He ended up in the house of an Aziz, a leader of the city, and lived with the Aziz and his wife. And then after living there with them for some time, the wife of the Aziz tried to seduce Yusuf alayhi salam. So she tried to take advantage of him in a very inappropriate way. And he actually tried to run away from her. So again, we're going into these trials and these hardships that this young man had to endure. So he runs away from her, and the Aziz ends up walking in. And despite the way that it was revealed to the Aziz on how he could discern who was at fault, because immediately the wife says, he tried to seduce me. But the Aziz was given a witness or testimony about how he could discern which led him to know that Yusuf alayhi salam was innocent. He still sided with his wife. So word got out in the city about the wife of the Aziz, and she became mocked. And so in her anger, she decided, well, I'll show some of these people. She invited a bunch of women to her house, and she had Yusuf alayhi salam to come out in front of those women. And those women were enthralled by the beauty. So one of the qualities and the characteristics of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam is that he is often commented on as being one of the most handsome men ever and one of the most beautiful prophets. And so you have a man who was physically beautiful, but also his soul was beautiful. So they were absolutely enthralled, and it said that they cut themselves. But not only that, after that, those women themselves tried to seduce Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. And what he had to do in this next trial, it wasn't just one woman this time, it was several women who tried to seduce him. So he called out to his Lord, he called out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, another sign for us to read is that he prayed to his Lord to help him. Because why? Because he was worried about succumbing to what was wrong and what was against his own soul and against his own nature. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped him. And one of the ways that he got helped was that he was again wrongly accused and sent to jail. So we talk about hardship after hardship after hardship from a person who was righteous and he was innocent. So he was thrown into jail. And one of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that was bestowed upon Yusuf alayhi salam, other than his beauty, was his ability to interpret dreams. And he did that for some of his companion prisoners, while at the same time calling them to the natural and the right way, the religion of monotheism, the religion of truth. So it was from that one of the prisoners later on was working for the king at the time, or the ruler at the time, who had a dream himself and wanted that dream interpreted. And then that prisoner remembered Yusuf alayhi salam. And it was at that time that Yusuf alayhi salam was invited to the ruler's presence to interpret his dreams. Yusuf alayhi salam, at that time, again, it was because of his insight. He didn't just leave the jail and go to the king and just simply interpret the dream and that was it. He said, I want you to find out what is the status of the women who accused me. SubhanAllah. It's a beautiful story for lessons for everybody. So they went, the women were brought, and many of the women were still trying to accuse him. But the wife of the Aziz, she fessed up. She said that Yusuf alayhi salam was innocent and had always been innocent. So now Yusuf alayhi salam, after hardship, after years upon years, now his season was very long in his trials. But years and years and years, he became exonerated from what was levied against him. And he had advised the king that he should work in the court. And so he became a man of the court. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destined that the brothers would have to go to that land and seek provisions. So when Yusuf alayhi salam met up with the brothers who didn't recognize him at the time, he had come up with a plan to reunite with his family. So he had told his brothers to go back and bring the other brother, his younger brother, Yusuf alayhi salam's actual younger brother from the same mother. So they went back, the brothers did, and they tried to speak to their father, Yaqub alayhi salam, and they asked him, let us take the brother, and the brother we know to be Benjamin or Binyamin. And of course, the father was very reluctant and had reminded them of what had happened to Yusuf alayhi salam. But at some point, he agreed and he allowed him to go. And then when Binyamin was with Yusuf alayhi salam, Yusuf was able to start plan B of his plan, and that was to reunite with his father. So he had had them go back to relay it to the father. And somewhere around that time, Yusuf alayhi salam had given one of the brothers his actual shirt. So now we come back to the story of Yaqub alayhi salam and his sadness, not a depression, certainly not going into himself in such a way that he could no longer live his life or that he fell into a despair, but he was certainly sad about the circumstances of his son, and he had always, up until that time, felt the pains and the agony of that son and what the son had to go through in his life. So like I said, he had lost his visual sight for some time, and he had even been counseled by family members and other members that, oh, well, you need to give up your hope for reuniting with that son, Yusuf alayhi salam. If you keep thinking this way, you're gonna die on this. But Yaqub alayhi salam, for many reasons, kept his faith. Again, he never did fall into despair. He always had the hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when that shirt came back to Yusuf alayhi salam, that shirt was placed over his head and he regained his sight. So if we go to the Quran. Okay, excuse me, but I lost that place. I wanted to give you the ayah where he regained his sight. But he did actually regain his sight, and he was overjoyed by his faith being manifested in his life. He had always kept the faith, and he would tell his sons that I will be reunited with Yusuf. But then when Binyamin and the older son, and that's part of the story as well, but he had then had 3 sons that didn't come back to him. He said, I will be reunited with the 3 sons. So it was because of his faith, and his insight, that internal vision, that Allah blessed him again with the external vision. And one of the things that Yaqub alayhi salam would say is that I complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in his times of hardship, he didn't need to complain to his sons. He didn't need to throw those things in their faces. And part of the story too is that Yusuf alayhi salam, when the brothers came, he didn't throw things in their faces. He forgave them. And then when the family was all united, his vision that he related to his father at a very young age came to fruition. It said that his family members prostrated to him, and he would say to his father, this is the vision, or this is the dream that I had in my youth. So we take these stories again to see ourselves in what has been revealed in the illustrious Quran, in the true revelation of Al-Quran Al-Kareem, that we as human beings will endure many things. We will endure people who have knowledge and that will still try to plot against us. We will endure many hardships in life, and we will endure many tests and trials in life, but we have to be people of an internal vision. Alhamdulillah, if we still have an external vision, if we were blessed with that, then we use the external vision. We use our external hearing. We use all the 5 senses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted and gifted us. But even if we lose that external vision, even if it's taken away, we have to keep the faith and turn into the internal vision. Because right now, what we're fighting is a virus that we cannot see. We have to deal with a virus that we cannot see. And the world has had to turn to what the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are. Another proof of this Quran, another proof of what's revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We had to go into self-quarantine. That was the teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is the hadith, it's his way, it's his sunnah. So when we endure things that we are challenged with, we have to go back within. Go to that internal vision. Go to the fitrah. Go to the pure nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted to all of us, and to stave off the schemes of shaitan. In other words, to fight off the trials and the plans of the devil. And it is truly a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this had come before Ramadan, because it's this time that we know that Allah has blessed this month where he ties off the shayateen, the devils, and he opens the door of the paradise. Alhamdulillah wa subhanallah. These are the gifts and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and these are the things that we go to. And we have this month of the reading of the Quran, where we read the ayat and the revelations, and we take out of it those things that are going to cultivate us, and they're going to help us, and that are going to move us forward. And with that, I close. I thank you for your time and attention. Again, I am truly honored to be one of the speakers this year. I thank the presenters, and I thank the people in the background and behind the scenes that have used this platform, because this is not the platform that we typically use. And this is another blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I hope that I have relayed some good. And if there is some good that came of it, that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And any wrong that I've said, any deviation, any mistake is from myself. And I pray that I have been a benefit of it, and that others can benefit from this talk today. And sometimes it is the listener that is better than the speaker. And so again, I thank you all. typically I do this in the beginning, but I realized that I didn't do this earlier. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness that there is no God but the Almighty God, who is the creator of all and everything. And I bear witness that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the messenger of God Almighty. I thank you all. I greet you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. At this point, we would like to open the chat section for questions, as well as the, I guess, the chat section in the Facebook Live for questions as well. We have one question, and they are asking you, Sister Obaydah, you being someone who specializes in medicine and speaking to a holistic approach, they're wondering what are some things that we can do to help us during this time to improve our Ramadan, as well as strengthen ourselves holistically from medicine to eating to spiritual development, in order to make it through this trying time.
Subhanallah wa alhamdulillah. So actually, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I say that because it's a beautiful question, but it's a whole lecture or a set of lectures in and of itself. But I will say this, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that the best of deeds are those deeds that are done consistently. So even if it's a small deed and it's done consistently, that's what we want to be able to do, because oftentimes what you see are these huge trends that happen. You know, there are all these, for example, different diets that come out. And so people will say, well, I'm on the keto diet, I'm on the Mediterranean diet, I'm a pescatarian, a vegetarian, a vegan, and all these things come out, and they come and then they go. So we have to search for what it is that is consistent and helpful and works for us. And for each one of us is going to be something different. For example, for me, there are certain seafoods that I cannot eat anymore because I'm allergic, definitely allergic to it now. So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the Quran that the seafood is halal. But for me, some of that I just cannot have. So if we go back and to answer that question and go all the way back, I'm going to go all the way back. And I'm going to go back to what Sister Shahidah said earlier, because when it was asked of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the religion, right? It says the person was asking about how to practice their religion, how to gain paradise. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave them the 5 pillars of Islam, right? And I say that because sometimes we need to remember that the religion itself of Islam is very easy, and we ourselves will complicate things. So if I start to tell each and every person who's on this presentation right now, well, you need to follow this diet, and you need to do this, and you need to do that, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And sometimes when we miss what's even the most fundamental, we miss out. It's easy to miss out. So if I were to say any advice, I would say simplify your life. Do small deeds that you can do consistently, and grab on to what are the pillars, the foundations, the things that will always hold you up. So it's the bear witnessing, you bear witness to yourself every single day of your belief in God and the one God and his messengers. It is to pray. It is right now to fast. And Shahidah put it very beautifully when she talked about zakat in the sense of purifying yourself. And then the Hajj, which is the jihad. And then if we talk about the actual eating, so right now we're fasting and we're learning to abstain and keep ourselves from that which is even halal, things that are allowed for us to do during any other month. At these times, we have to restrain from doing that. So that restraint sometimes in the food is restrain yourself from the things that you know are going to harm you. There's junk food and processed foods and overconsumption, or things that are sugary, or things that when we already know that we have illnesses that we still indulge in. Again, that question is very broad, and I hope, because I really feel like there's a lot more that I can say, but I don't want to overcomplicate it, and I really want to simplify it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Sister Obaydah. The next question that we have is, you spoke on 2020 vision using the example of Prophet Yusuf and his father. How should we look at the times that we are currently living in, not from an external eye, but from an internal vision?
SubhanAllah. So if we look at where we are now, right now we're in a global pandemic. And again, we are dealing with something that we cannot see. And so when we internalize this, we have to first say, do I have faith? Do I have the faith that's going to carry me through this? Not only this, but it's going to carry me beyond. So first of all, I have to, one, believe in God, that God is going to provide for me and my family and the whole worldwide community. That's the first thing we have to believe. And then once we have that belief, we go in and we read what Allah has revealed to us, to look for what Allah is putting on our hearts to move forward into a vision plan for ourselves and for our communities. So we look at it and we know that hardships and trials are given to everybody, but particularly to the believers as blessings. So that's how we look at it. This is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is going to help me from today onto the rest of my life. It is an example, it is a sign, it's a revelation, it's a trial for myself and the whole world, but myself and my children. And think about what people are gonna say, your children and your children's children. These will be conversations, these will be things that they can relate to. When my son was talking to me about it, he said, Mom, this reminds me of the time of Musa alayhi salam, when the locust came onto the people. And I said, very good, son. So that's the personal lesson that he got from it. Each of us will get our own lesson. But I do want to say this. There are two things that I wanted to say. One was, I did find that ayah, and it's 1293. And for the sake of time, I'll read the English. Go with this, my shirt, and cast it over the face of my father. He will come to see clearly. Then come ye to me together with all your family. So that's to finish that part out. But there was, I found a transcript of Imam Mu'tasim Muhammad, and this was in August 19, 2018. And somebody had asked him about the vision, a vision that he had. And this is what his response was. It said, first, building a community is an obligation on all Muslims and believers who live in Muslim lands or in non-Muslim lands. I think having excellent models of community life in a predominantly non-Muslim society is a more conscious demand for us than for citizens of Muslim lands. So it reminds me of this vision that we're supposed to have. So when we go in this insight, we have to pull out, okay, so now that these times have changed and everybody's talking about what a new normal is, how am I going to be a contributor in this world to be an example and build a community in this land? And it's really funny to me that I saw there were some memes and communications, and this was on Facebook that I was on, and there was a very negative comment about after this is over, then people are going to suffer the consequences of Sharia law. But the response of the sister, it was funny. And what she said was, well, brother, you guys are now washing your hands several times a day. You're covering your faces. You're praying more. She said, you're a Muslim. Assalamu alaikum. So that was a joke. But again, we are now having to practice the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and practice some of the tenets that we have been given in Islam. So us as Muslims who may not have been doing it before, and people who are non-Muslim. So that's what we should be getting from it internally, is finding a vision of how we can be productive members of this society.
The next question is, you spoke on charting a new course or a new set of norms after this is over. What should we be doing as Muslims to be leaders in charting this new norm?
So again, the first thing to do, number one, is to make the intention. We make dua and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will make us righteous people. So I'm not a person personally who believes in seeking leadership, a leadership role. I believe that that you live your life in such a way that you do what's best and you will become a leader. I also believe that leaders are great followers. They're great followers. So number one, if we're to be the best leader that we can be in any community, we have to be the best follower of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, we have to be the best follower of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was also the embodiment of the other prophets. We have to be followers of the righteous people. There are plenty of other righteous people that are commenting on in the Quran. And I want to highlight this too, because there was a question earlier about women and the role of women. And last year's theme was about the women in Islam, and in particular, the four righteous women. And so we can look to women like Asiya. We can look to women like Khadija, radiyallahu anha. We can look at Fatima, radiyallahu anha, and we can look at Maryam, peace be upon her. So these were women that were mentioned as being women of paradise. And you didn't necessarily see them as being a quote unquote leader, right? Meaning when I say that, I mean what we consider to be a leader. Oh, well, that person wasn't a representative. She wasn't a congressman. She wasn't the chief of staff. She wasn't the president, right? But these women were deemed to be leaders in the society, and they were the best of women. And so, well, who did they lead? They led themselves as followers of the true religion. And in some cases, they led their children. And in some cases, they did lead the community. So that's how we become leaders. First, we work on striving, right, to be good Muslims. And some people will say we strive for perfection, and that becomes a base of contention. But if you strive to do what's right and know that you're going to fail, we're human beings, we fail. The brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, the sons of Yaqub alayhi salam, they failed and they succumbed to the schemes of Shaitan. But later on, they redeemed themselves. So we will fail. We're human beings. It's okay. We will fail. But we strive to be good. And then we allow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put us in places of leadership. And don't always look to say, I have this title, I have this role, and then that makes me the leader. Because you don't know how many times you've walked out of your house and somebody has looked at you and listened to you and watched you and followed just because your actions were beautiful, they were sound, and they were to be modeled. You were a leader and you didn't even know it.
Alhamdulillah, Sister Obaydah. Inshallah, we can all exemplify the behavior that allows us to be leaders in our own respective rights. At this time, we have no more questions, and we would like to thank you, Sister Obaydah, for this opportunity. We appreciate it, and we're glad that you participated in this Ramadan session via Zoom and live in this year of 2020 clear vision, externally, but more importantly, internally. Thank you, Sister Obaydah. Is there any last things you would like to say before we close out your session?
I just again want to pray that Allah will bless us this Ramadan. This is a month where the good that we do is multiplied immensely. We have great opportunity, especially in this season, to take advantage of it. We may find ourselves in very difficult times, but I pray that we do not fall into despair. I pray that those of us that need help will reach out for that help. And I pray that those that are able to help will be able to help those that need the help. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up our hearts and give us the capacity to continue to do for Him and read His signs and live His signs. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate us in this life, but will grant us Jannatul Firdaus, will grant us places in paradise. And again, I thank you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Obaydah. Me? At this time, we would like to bring attention to a few housekeeping. And let's go here. For those who can see, we would like to indicate here for those who can see that we are able to make donations through our Cash App to help us to continue to provide Ramadan sessions and other events through Masjid al-Mu'minun. Please put SR 2020 in the note if you are sending any donations. Assalamu alaikum. We had some technical difficulties. The power has been going out in our section for some time. We lost our co-host, Sister Charmaine, and we are having some technical difficulties here as well. But alhamdulillah, we're back. And we are encouraging everyone to log in tomorrow, which is Sunday, May 3rd at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. If you log in tomorrow, you're able to join us to be able to hear from our beautiful sister Anisa Dewan. She is the inspiration behind the Sisters Ramadan session here in Memphis, Tennessee, and has been a part of it since its conception. She is a student of Imam Muhammad, and she is a teacher who have had the opportunity to teach around the country, and we are blessed to have her here tomorrow at 1:30. So please join us via Facebook Live. To get the Zoom information, you can find it on our Facebook page to be able to get the Zoom information, as well as the Zoom, the Facebook Live of the capabilities. Without further ado, we would like to close out with how we started with Al-Fatiha. And we would like to encourage everyone to have a blessed Ramadan, continue to go internal as well as external in your insight and your vision in order to grow and develop as believers during this beautiful and blessed month of Ramadan. Let us close out with Al-Fatiha in unison. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. Inshallah, we will see you tomorrow.